Hello, Eva.
Hello.
I understand that you're a philosophical practitioner and that interestingly you work, among other things, with artists and also with audience of art. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
I started to work with an art mediator because she followed a course on Socratic Dialogue with me, and she was fascinated by the fact that like the Socratic or philosophical way of speaking invites people to share their thoughts and to investigate their thoughts. And what she noticed was that when people go to a museum or to a theater, then people talk about the play or talk about what they saw, but they don't have tools to deepen the things they see and the things they think. So together with her, we developed some kind of tools, like one of the tools is like philosophical game, which we play after a theater show or after a visit to an art museum. And the nice thing about the play is that we want people to share the philosophical thinking in a way without them to know that they're really doing philosophy. Like there is a creative part, there's a playful part, but still you have this philosophical investigation.
So can you give an example of some specific context that you did it and what happened?
The first time we did it, it was after an art exhibition, which was on, like, it was a critic on democracy. Markets and Democracy was the name. And you had a lot of like international artists who showed a critique on the way we think about consuming and democracy and stuff like that. But the artworks were very conceptual. And the problem with conceptual art is that the artist has gone through a long process before he makes his painting or whatever. But the audience doesn't see the process. Mm-hmm. You just see the finishing product. And to really understand what you see, it's really nice to go into the concept and to do the investigation. And so that's what we do with the audience. So we invite them to think about the process and all the possibilities which the concepts that the artist puts into the exhibition can go.
So how does this happen in practice?
In practice, okay. So you have like a big thing. It's difficult in English. It's like a wheel, okay. And we invite the audience to formulate some kind of statements, and we put the statements on the wheel, and then you turn on the wheel, and just by coincidence, you get one statement. And then with these statements, we start to play. So we really start to play with the dice. So somebody throws a dice, and then you go to a color, because you have 6 colors, 6 parts of the dice. And then each color invites you to do something with logic argumentation, just as you do in philosophical practice. Like one of the balls of the dice say like, okay, now you can give an argument for the opposite. Or you can give an objection.
To what?
To the statement.
I see.
So we come up with a statement by coincidence, and then we investigate it. But the rules on how to investigate the statement is decided by the one who throws the dice and by coincidence. So that's the creative or the playful part, which is really nice for people because they start to do philosophy without really knowing that they do philosophy because they are just part of a game.
Yeah. So this really is a way for them to ask in a playful way, to ask questions, to think about questions about the topic.
Yeah.
I see. Interesting.
And we developed a game because we noticed that if you do like, if you create another context, which is not so threaten as saying philosophical conversation, that you invite more people which aren't used to the philosophy.
I see.
And that's what we want. We want to reach these people.
I see.
Yeah.
Interesting. And you also work with artists, I understand.
Yes. I'm also teaching artists who finish their art school, and together with them I'm doing like some kind of philosophical counseling on the concepts they work with in their artwork.
Give me an example.
One of my students is working around the concept of death, for example.
Death, like
death.
dying?
Yeah, like dying. Like it's also a concrete concept, but it's also a philosophical concept.
Mm-hmm.
And if she thinks about dying and death, she comes up with this typical cliche things or classical things.
Mm-hmm.
And if I do the counseling with her, it's opening other possibilities in which you can look and you can think about death. Mm-hmm. And if she's exploring these philosophical traces, then it can stimulate her to
expand.
Yeah, to expand the things she makes in art.
I see.
So I think if you want to be a good artist, that it's not only good that you have the skills to do it with your hands, but you also need to have the skills to think about the concept. So I think both should come together, and that's why we use it as a stimulus.
Okay, so it seems that this would work especially well with artists who work on specific concepts.
I think it can work with everybody. I think philosophy is good for everybody, but I think there is really a strong connection between creative things and philosophical thinking. Mm-hmm. Like doing something creative, it's like doing philosophy with your hands somehow. And I think if you do the philosophy or the creative thing with your brain and you can combine those two, you can have like a more interesting product. The nice thing also about this game is that we try to combine the artist and audience. So they can play together because the one who's looking and the one who's making, they start from another perspective. And one of the question or the statement they choose was chosen was, does my name make me to who I am? Mm-hmm. And then we were playing, and then we had to give I don't remember which argument she had to give, but at a certain moment she said like, okay, now I understand, because I was a twin when I was in the belly of my mother, and when I was born, my twin sister died, and I could never grasp the fact that I really had a sister till the moment that my mother told me I wanted to call her Sophie. And she said at the moment that my mother said, your sister who was dead was meant to be Sophie. And she said at the moment that I could give her a name, she was a person. Mm-hmm. And it was a really nice moment because she said, I never shared this with anybody, and now I'm sharing it with the whole audience of people I don't know. So I think this is a nice... Right. Yeah.
And was it connected to her artwork?
Not at all. No.
So it was really a philosophical counseling in the middle of a game.
Yeah, it was by surprise. Yeah. So I think what we do is like using art as a stimulus to think about whatever is important at the moment for the people who are there. So
interesting. And you do it where?
Museums, like after a theater play or a theater festival, or in art galleries, or in like this cultural or social centra, even like in a bar. Oh, really? So you have the theater house or whatever, and next to that you have a bar. We also did it there, so you could do it in any public space. Mm-hmm. We also did it on like this street festivals, like in Brussels where I live. All the neighborhoods have like this small street festivals which the neighbors organize, and we also did it there. Mm-hmm. And it was a really nice way to meet your neighbor in another way. So we played with our own neighbors, and it was really nice because it stimulates another conversation, which they would never have if you just talk with your neighbor on the street.
Why don't you use the word philosophy?
I think I did it in the beginning when I said philosophical game. So for us, the word game is as important as philosophy, because we wanted to make a balance between like playing, like relaxing, and thinking, like focusing. So I think if we just call it philosophy, it might be too heavy or too threatening.
Very interesting, Eva. Thank you very much.
Thanks.